You're listening to episode 1 of the Marine Matters podcast from the Scottish Seabird Centre, which is an education and conservation charity based in North Berwick. I'm Emily, the volunteer coordinator at the centre, and today we're taking a closer look at our award-winning conservation project, Sos Puffin. Later, I'll be joining the Sos Puffin Volunteers out on the island of Fidra to chat about their experiences delivering practical conservation work as part of the project. But first, I'm chatting to John Hunt, who has been coordinating the project since it began more than 13 years ago. Firstly, John, thank you so much for coming in to chat to me about Sos Puffin today. I wanted to start with the very basics. So for anyone that doesn't know, what is Sos Puffin?
Well, Sos Puffin is a voluntary conservation project set up by the Scottish Seabird Centre in 2007, and it's still going strong. The aims of the project are to bring under control an invasive plant called tree mallow, which threatens the important populations of puffins on 3 of the islands near North Berwick. And as the name suggests, tree mallow is a big plant. It's really quite an impressive one, up to 3 metres in height. And where it occurs naturally, it's a relatively rare coastal plant, but once it gets onto a seabird island, it can go crazy. And what's happened here on the islands near North Berwick. And by the time the project started in 2007, it had formed a completely impenetrable jungle across the island of Craigleith, and the important puffin population had collapsed from probably over 10,000 breeding birds to very few. And on the other 2 islands, Fidra and the Lao, it was spreading rapidly as well and threatening the puffin population there. So what happens with the project is that we take out work parties to the islands to cut down the tree mallow. And since we started the project, we've had over 300 work parties, and nearly more than 1,300 people have taken part, and some of them have come back many times they've enjoyed it so much. So it's been quite a sizable project.
And can anyone volunteer with Sos Puffin? Yes,
indeed. Anyone is very welcome. We have a minimum age of 11, but we've had people working right through to their late 80s, so age certainly isn't a factor. We've had masses of people from all over the world taking part, and they really seem to enjoy the experience. Getting to an island they wouldn't otherwise get to, meeting other people perhaps of like minds, and also I think the satisfaction of seeing they've made a difference. At the end of the day, they can see how much tree mallow they've cut.
John, we both know that working in remote locations isn't always easy. What are the main difficulties you have experienced when trying to deliver the Sos Puffin project in the past?
Well, I suppose many of the difficulties that arise are to do with the weather and the sea conditions. Normally we go out in good weather conditions, but often it's not good, and there can be problems with just leaving the harbour, let alone landing on an island. Sometimes we've set off and got out to the island, but then the skipper has decided it's too difficult to land, and we've had to come all the way back again, which is very disappointing. The islands are remote, of course, and they do have a sort of atmosphere all of their own, a bit of that island magic that people respond to so often. Sometimes we do get caught out. I remember one occasion in March, I had a party of students out on Fidra, and despite my giving them lots of advice before they came, typical students, some of them came with inadequate clothing, and the weather deteriorated, the wind got up, the rain started, and they started to get really cold. Fortunately, we were able to get the boat out and get them off early before they started to suffer from hypothermia. And on the way back in the boat, they got soaked again with the seawater. But they said they enjoyed it, and perhaps they did because they came back again the following year. But we have to be aware, obviously, of the risk of accidents in a remote place like an island where it may be difficult to get people off. So we take every care we can to ensure people's safety, take out a first aid kit, I'm a first aider and so on. And touch wood, so far we've been very lucky and not had any serious incidents.
So we are lucky enough to live and work in a wonderful part of the world. What kind of wildlife do you get to see when you're working out on the islands?
Oh well, that all depends. But seeing wildlife is a real bonus on these trips. We don't go out in the breeding season because we don't want to disturb the nesting birds, but we usually see something of interest. In spring, in April, we good chance of seeing puffins, sometimes large numbers, hundreds of them flying around us. And I recall in the early days of the project when we were eating our way into the jungle of tree mallow and uncovering old puffin burrows, the puffins would be coming up behind us and actually exploring the burrows, going into the burrows within a few feet of us as we were working. So that was a real thrill and a real inspiration to the volunteers. We usually see seals, grey seals, which have their pups on Craigleith in late autumn. And if we're very lucky, we may see bottlenose dolphins from the island or from the boat. But anything is possible.
And lastly, I wanted to ask, what has SOS Puffin achieved?
Well, I would say that thanks to the huge amount of hard work by our wonderful volunteers, we have been successful in keeping tree mallow under control, so that for the last 10 years at least, puffins have been able to breed on these 3 islands without any interference from tree mallow. And as a result, the puffin populations have either recovered or stabilised. So I think that's a real plus. But there's an awful lot of tree mallow seed in the soil still, and that continues to regenerate. So we've got to keep at it because we don't want to lose all we've achieved up till now. But apart from the conservation benefits, I would say that it has been quite an achievement that the project's been delivered entirely by volunteers. And there's been educational and community benefits from that, I think. The fact that so many people have been out there, enjoyed themselves, but also learnt about wildlife conservation and met other people, I think that's all a real positive. And for some, it's been a life-changing experience. A few volunteers have gone on to have careers in conservation, which has been inspired by these work parties. And I would say that if we get to the stage where there's no more tree mallow, no more work parties, we're going to have a lot of disappointed volunteers.
After chatting to John, I wanted to find out a little bit more about the project from the SOS Puffin volunteers, so I joined a work party out on the island of Fidra. I caught up with Charlotte and Mike about their volunteering experiences delivering SOS Puffin during a well-deserved tea break. Firstly, thank you both so much for making the time to chat to me. I wanted to start by asking, what made you want to become an SOS Puffin volunteer?
Firstly, because I just really, really love puffins. So they are my favourite bird ever, and they're probably one of my favourite species ever. I have done surveys and things like that before, but I've not done any practical conservation. It just really appealed to me, the idea of going on a boat, landing on an island and physically cutting something down that would help those little puffins. It's really satisfying just being out in nature and being able to help them in that way.
I live locally in North Berwick, but I also work in conservation. I knew about the project. I think it's been running since 2007, and I think it's done a tremendous job in terms of restoring a seabird island. I wanted to contribute to that, and I spend a lot of time behind the desk. I wanted to actually contribute to practical work on the ground. And this was a great opportunity to do that, I think.
Now, obviously, we're among the privileged few who have the opportunity to enjoy the wilderness out here firsthand. But for anyone who hasn't volunteered before, what is it like spending the day out on an island like Fidra?
I think it's wonderful. It's almost like working in a different world. You have a far closer contact with nature, and it's giving me a different perspective and view of the local landscape, one which I'm not used to. So instead of looking across from North Berwick to Fidra, I'm looking across from Fidra to North Berwick and the mainland, and it's providing a new insight, a new perspective.
One of the things about working on an island like Fidra, there are very few places I feel that you can go to where you can't still hear traffic in the distance or people. Now, sitting on Fidra as we are now, you can just hear waves and you can hear seabirds, and it's about sort of a 10-minute trip on a boat to get here, and then the boat leaves and you feel properly isolated in the middle of nature and wild nature, and that's just really, really amazing.
So I wanted to finish by asking, why do you think projects like SOS Puffin are important?
It's everybody doing their little bit towards conservation, really. I mean, we're not all of us scientists, we're not all of us necessarily qualified or have a science background, but we've come from all walks of life, and we can do our little bit to help this amazing species. We can cut down the mallow, which means that they'll be able to breed, and we'll hopefully see, as we have done, a real increase in the numbers. I think it's very satisfying, it's very important for nature, and it's really important for people as well, just to get time out in terms of well-being and socialising, but just generally feeling like you've really made a difference.
I think these local conservation projects are very important because they bring people together. They help people understand and engage with nature and natural heritage. They help to galvanise communities. And of course they help restore and benefit nature and seabird populations like here on the Forth Islands.
So that brings us to the end of this episode. Huge thanks to John Hunt, Mike Thornton and Charlotte Bray for contributing to this podcast, and to all of the SOS Puffin volunteers for their amazing work protecting breeding seabirds over the last 13 years. If you want to find out more about SOS Puffin or discover how you can get involved, visit the Scottish Seabird Centre website by clicking on the link in the episode description, or get in touch by emailing volunteercoordinator@seabird.org. To keep up with all of the latest news from the Scottish Seabird Centre, you can also find us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Thank you for listening.